Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting and welcome back to the Day 1 summary session. Once again, we are pleased to have Mr. Nick Gowing as a moderator for this session. And joining him on this evening's panel are Professor Hideyuki Tokuda, Dean of the Graduate School of Media and Governance and Director of the Ubiquitous Computing and Communications Laboratory at Keio University, and Professor Rex Hughes, Co-Director of the Cyber Innovation Network at the Computer Laboratory of Cambridge University. And now I'd like to turn the stage over to Mr. Gowing.
Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back. This is relentless, and it keeps going through dinner. So don't think you're going to be let off. But remember what was written by William Sato in his opening remarks. He said he wants to avoid a repeating of old discussions, and he wants real progress in all these areas. So my job is to keep pushing you, because I think what I heard is a transmission of a lot of ideas, but I'm not sure we've yet got to the stage of real engagement and real discussion, which allows a moving forward on many of the issues. I couldn't be in every session, of course, but that's why we've got the two challengers here to share with you some of the ideas that they've seen and heard, and trust and transparency coming through, the problems of legal systems still, the problem of cyber norms. What are the new cyber norms? Where is there going to be some kind of cooperation? What kind of level of cooperation will there be? You've all got a lot of work to do still here in Okinawa. And I want to get the reflections of our two panelists, and then I want to hear from you as well about where you can still keep pushing. Then we're going to be joined by two ministers, and the three sessions are going to really morph into each other, and they will finish at 20 to 7 when it's time for dinner. There are a lot of unthinkables still out there, and I think that's what still comes through. And I would encourage you to be thinking about those. With the ministers, we will have time for some questions and some points from the floor as well. One of the ministers will be speaking in Japanese, so make sure that you have a radio headset. But what kind of new model are we looking for? What kind of new model should you all be looking for and helping define here in Okinawa? Well, let me put those points to our two panelists at this point. Rex Hughes, what are your impressions of what you've heard and seen?
Thank you very much, Nick. Well, for me personally, it's really been a remarkable day, and with the type of expertise we have here, there are no problems that we cannot tackle. Of course, we have limited time and resources, but in terms of issues that we thought could warrant more coverage and that may be missing, there was much debate about the role of the nation state and whether it is really equipped to deal with cyber issues, and we know where it is and where it is not. So the organizational dimension, we know how good the private sector is in tackling these problems. We know the government just is not as good. And it's ironic, of course, because it's government that's issuing directives and pushing legislation and regulation, which can have huge costs for the private sector and a burden on innovation. And if we're thinking about especially this country and Abenomics and how cyber fits into that, it's very important that innovation be cultivated in the right way and that organizations are honed, especially in government, to be responsive, to be adaptive, because we don't know what black swans are coming. One of the speakers talked about, well, can't agencies just map everything that's possible and the realm of possibilities on the spectrum? Well, of course not. There will be a black swan inevitably that will be as disruptive or more disruptive than 9/11. And when that day comes, the question is not so much, did we prepare for it, but can we adapt to it?
What about your impression of the speed at which the adaptation can take place? I certainly came away from a lot of the sessions with a feeling that really the challenge and the scale of challenge moves much faster than the ability of systems to handle this.
Is that for me, Nick? Speed is essential. We now live in internet time, and we know in terms, again, of the private sector that your company can die if you don't respond. We've seen with large retailers, if there's a data breach and they don't respond, now it's not the CTO that loses his job, it's the CEO. So boards need to be prepared. There was a great book in the conference packet about board level preparedness that gets into the risk assessment models and what your insurer should be preparing for you. But no one has an answer yet. It's going to take leadership. And the best companies, we know the world's largest retailer now doesn't even have a store. Actually, I think they just opened their first retail store in New York or Seattle. But the speed at which companies adapt, government is going to have to close the gap. We no longer live in a Weberian world of ivory tower. Well, we sort of do, but smart countries are going to figure out how to get past that and come up with more innovative, flexible models.
All right, please put ideas into the mix in the next 20, 25 minutes after we've heard both our panelists. I want to keep the same spirit as this morning going. Dean Takuda, your impressions, please.
Yes, I was sitting mainly A session and half of the B sessions. I think fundamental common issue is the spectrum of trust. Fundamental issue is number one is the trust, establishment of trust among PPP or public-private academic partnership. So we have to work with the people we don't trust. So this spectrum trust is one key issue. The other one is the transparency. Well, we discussed about information sharing this morning, but again, how to improve the transparency among the multi-stakeholders is another challenging issues. Okay.
What about just picking up on the issue of speed and the enormity of that challenge, given the flexibility, the adaptability, and the smartness of the adversaries in every single area we're talking about?
So attack is always much...
I was going to ask Dean if I may.
Sorry.
It's all right. Keep the microphone. You can both answer it, but Dean, Takuda, you go first.
Okay. So in terms of speed, okay, all the sectors, okay, well, because I live in Japan, but many of the Japanese organizational structures, they tend to be very rigid, and then they don't have any quick decision making. Not only just the government, but also private sector as well. So this is a fundamental issue as well, how we keep up with the speed of technology or social change and so on. Okay, so speed is, again, yeah.
Rex, you were going to pick up on that too.
I have to remember my point now. Speed, agility, internet time, we know sort of what the new benchmarks that are emerging, but we know that big institutions, even in the private sector, blue chips, don't move at internet speed, and they sometimes have the biggest liability. So how you, I guess in a sense it's all about culture, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector. Can you shape a culture that's responsive and doesn't feel penalized if they make a mistake? Because let's face it, this is experimental. We're making a lot of this up as we go along. So flexibility, agility, resilience, all these buzzwords, they're important.
All right, who'd like to come in, please? Yeah, a microphone here. Don't sit on your hands. I don't want anyone to come to dinner and say, I was wanting to make this big point about unthinkables. And another here, please, as well. You can have two microphones if you want. You can speak
Wonderful.
in stereo. One here.
We have a stereo.
Okay. Could we bring the other microphone here,
so
please?
I'm Jakob Edberg, GR Japan, doing government relations consulting in Japan, and we just came in from a very interesting workshop where we're talking about regulatory framework for privacy and for security, and the theme here was speed, and somehow it feels like the whole relationship between government and private sector will be challenged as we try to come up with regulation, proper regulation in this sector. Now, I'm very interested in hearing other people's views, but at least here in Japan, the understanding of the government being able to regulate and knowing always better than the private sector is becoming extremely difficult, and somehow there seems that the only way forward is to have to work together, and that the government will have to give up this idea of being superior to the private sector and understanding better, and also but having to work with for-profit companies and building rules together. And this is a huge cultural change that seems to be necessary.
Do you see even a realization of this, let alone a will to do it?
I'm not sure it's probably slowly coming, but the more I listen to the discussions today, I have a feeling that this will be the only way forward, and I'm just interested in hearing everybody else's views.
All right,
on
there
what
was a
we're discussing.
reference, I think, from someone from the European Union about there being a sense of Jurassic Park when it comes to this issue. Please, who would like to come in next as well?
Okay, Okinawa University, Japan, and then speed is a very important origin of a discussion about everything. So I understand that the technology and the business area, then speed is very high because it's internet, because it's digital technology. But the point about the security thing is that the other sectors, other than the business and the technology, is not that fast to understand everything. So, for example, the today's internet, IoT, and everything is like it's a large iceberg, and then only the surface of the ocean. Then there is a nice IoT space in the future, and the data and everything, application services. But under the ocean, there is a lot of technology behind, under the ocean, and then we really need to understand the entire thing. Otherwise, the security. Cybersecurity would not be, kind of challenged by all of us, multi-stake.
Thank you very much indeed. Anyone else want to come in at this stage? Is Angela Mackay here? I'm sorry, I can't see you all. Angela, are you here? No, I can't see you at the moment. Okay. Anyone else want to? Please, yes. Sorry, I can't see. My lateral vision is not terribly good. And just introduce yourself, of course.
Hi, Phil Morris from British Telecom. One of the big things that we take a look at, and you mentioned about the nation-state actors, et cetera, and we're trying to get these nation-state agreements. But at times, it's not the nation-states that are going to be the ones that can get together and actually protect us. If you look at like the subsea cables, there's international agreements between the subsea cable management companies about how do you manage failover from one to the other, what's the standards for doing that. And maybe the next level of protection isn't an agreement between governments, but maybe the global ISPs, and being able to put that together to share information at those kind of levels is going to be much more essential. And that's something that possibly could keep up with the speed of change and where things are going, because they're basically routing the world's traffic. So what do you think of that kind of?
Thank you very much for that question. And I'd like to return a question to you that BT, one of the oldest telecom companies in the world and original sponsor or participation in the International Telecommunications Union, is that organization even relevant today? Because it requires a large membership fee that most internet service providers cannot afford. So where do you see it going in terms of, and we know the internet exchanges that they do their peer-to-peer
Keep the microphone. We need to know if BT is still relevant.
Oops.
Is BT still
In Britain, you're trying to make yourself more relevant with your different platforms.
Yeah, so I think that there are going to be some consortiums that should be put on a platter and put off to the side, or because they become possibly too profit-oriented. The key factor is the public-private relationships that can come from that, and where can the government actually facilitate this type of action. So when you look at the financial information sharing capabilities that are across a number of the companies, both here in Japan, in the US, and in Europe, a lot of that is facilitated and actually supported by the governments, right? So they create platforms that allow it to happen. They actually put funding forward to allow it to happen. They create rules and regulations that says you can't be sued if you share this information, et cetera. And I think it's exactly the same model needs to be applied across the larger, broader swath of all telecommunications and ISP handling.
Dean Takoda.
In terms of this relationship between the government and private sectors, in Japan we have sector council composed by private sector as well as MIC, trying to share the cyber threat informations, and also there is a J-ship activity. So it's not easy to establish such kind of collaborative culture or mutual trust among the government and as well as private sectors. But I think every country is building that kind of movement. Otherwise, we cannot solve this.
Let me come on to one other area which came out particularly in 1B1 about what normative is, what the new norms are. What was your impression, or how vital is it to define and at least understand the new norms in the new normative, and what is it?
So I think what's missing, Nick, on that is the driving force behind the government group of experts conversation on cyber norms are governments, and it's a bit disconnected from the private sector. The UN really struggles to have an interface other than the ITU and organizations that are really geared up to do that, to shape these norms. So I think there's a binary controversy whether cyber norms can be achieved through the universal rights model. We know two countries in particular, they're very much opposed to the more liberal democratic model in cyberspace. So discussions of information sovereignty are worlds apart in terms of what free countries and maybe not so free are having. So I think there's reason to be skeptical whether that can be achieved in the near term, but it's an important dialogue.
All right, we're looking for new ideas here on the new norms. Dean Takuda, again, this issue of the new normative or the new norms.
I think it's all tough questions. I think everybody have to think about this new norm. Okay.
Can you help define it?
Well, I wish I can, but it's very tough. I think, as he said, we have two camps. One is very free countries, and the other one is controlled norm. Then we prefer to have some kind of free way of constructing a norm agreement among the multiple stakeholders.
And just a quick comment on that. Since we're in East Asia, it's rather than having just this cyber norms dialogue within the UN framework, global vectors, it's probably time to push it out into the regional fora. We have an APEC summit coming up next month, the East Asia summit, the trilateral. I'm not sure if it was discussed with Japan, China, Korea, but the normal institutionalization route may be better in the long run because there's more expertise. And in APEC, you have the private sector at the table, which is really important to have that feedback loop and through the ABAC and the CEO councils and so forth.
Anyone like to come in on the new norms and the new challenges here? Admiral Blair, can I come to you, because we're picking up something which was in your group, which Lynn Wells was chairing. Is there something you can add about this challenge of new norms? I just happen to be picking on you because of your opening remarks where you were talking about this challenge. Can you just get a microphone? Can you just help us on this? Because there may be others as well, but I just happen to have heard the Admiral's intervention.
Well, it's sort of interesting when we talk about sort of relative power between nation states and international companies on the one hand, and then we get into discussions of personal privacy and security on the other. And I'm sort of losing track about whether this is an elected representative government we're talking about that fills both of those roles. It always seemed to me that it was the government that was on the side of the people against the companies who would otherwise tend to do terrible things to them, and so when we had these discussions about companies on the one hand and people on the other hand and the government on the other hand, I think we forget the fact that the people elect the governments in our countries, and people expect their governments to do the right thing and to be the stewards of the common good. Somehow we tracked off in sort of a business-centered discussion in which innovation, profit, being able to make your company bigger was somehow on an equal basis with the people's interest being protected by their government. So I felt we got a little bit out of. We got into a strange frame of reference in some of the discussions in my groups with this nation state as a separate actor from being the representative of the people, which it certainly is in democratic governments.
So the new norm is what?
Well, I think we ought to go back to the old norm in which the people own their government and the government does the right thing for the people, and you keep business within the bounds where it is doing the people good and not doing them harm.
What about the tension, though, and this is going to underpin every single democratic state, between what the people think they should have and what governments now think they ought to have? And we're seeing that certainly in Britain with the Investigatory Powers Act, where the people can't understand the level of intrusion that the security services want, yet that's probably good for them.
Well, that's what elections are about, right? You elect a new set of politicians who are the ones who enforce the concept that is most appealing to you, the people. I think I think the self-correcting nature of democratic government is its greatest strength, and that's what we have to rely on.
Okay, thank you, Admiral. Please.
Yeah, one just quick point. New norms can be built through sort of social interaction. What I have in mind is dum-dum blade or cluster bombs or anti-personnel mines. They are easy weapons, but used to be okay. But now everybody opposes doing so. So in cyberspace too, freedom of free flow of information or regulatory approach. In addition to those, we could create new norms through our conversation.
Thank you. Word reached me that Angela's arrived in the room. Are you here, Angela? I got the wrong information. Okay, I apologize in that case. Who'd like to come in next? Please, Hori-san, here. A microphone here, please.
Yoshi Hori of Globus. I think it's not the new norm that we need. We need a new rule that we need. One of the sessions I attended, General Flynn has mentioned about we need to have a new rule to be set up, which is according to the same similar structure could be applied as from the copy from ocean, sea of ocean, rule of ocean. If you have ocean, there's ships meet each other, the ships will go right-hand side. And that kind of new rule has to be established. At the same time, we need to have a new law enforcement body, and we need to have international bodies to get together to counterattack. If it's a new norm, there are always some bad guys to be always challenging it. Therefore, I think the new rule is more important.
Thank you very much. I think, Angela, you are at the back, aren't you?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that.
The reason I pinged you is, and I'm sorry, I should have given you advance warning of this. I was very struck from the Microsoft point of view, what you were saying in that group about the challenges now for the C-suite and the challenge of speed and embracing what is essentially a whole raft of unthinkables coming down this new non-normative curve. Just give us an idea, capture some of the points you made there, can you?
Certainly. So basically, the conversation that we were having in the group is one of the very few upsides of the increase in public awareness and the press reporting around cyber attacks and breaches is that it is driving attention into the C-suite. But ultimately, that as I have conversations with C-suite and board members, they are struggling to fundamentally understand the nature of the risk, the cyber risk that they're facing. Whether you're talking about the risk from cyber crime, or you're talking about the risk of so-called APT that is oftentimes not actually advanced and persistent, or the truly advanced attacks that are coming from nation states, these board members who oftentimes don't have a lot of understanding of how the cyber infrastructure works find themselves confronted with all kinds of media reporting and very much so struggling to say, what are our responsibilities? What do I need to do about this? What are the risks to manage? And ultimately, what is the role of government? And then we talked a little bit also about how you can use tooling and frameworks to help them start understanding the connection between the business functions and the cyber risk, because ultimately their responsibility is to ensure those business functions and understanding how cyber risk can affect them.
But broadly, do you believe those in positions of responsibility in the C-suite have the capacity to change and adapt at the speed that's necessary?
I think current frameworks really do struggle to be sufficiently agile, not only in the face of the risk environment, but also in the face of the innovation environment. This is something where we're going to need to do, if you will, almost capacity building with executives to help them understand this space.
All right, thank you. Thank you. John Inglis.
Yes, I think I'd go back to what Admiral Blair had said, which is what's not changing is values, possibly even societal aspirations. What is changing is the means. The technology is changing dramatically, and this massive convergence that we see in the internet space demands a response in terms of the implementation. I think the new norm might be that we're going to rely less and less upon vertical orientation and more upon horizontal orientation.
Can you define the new norm with confidence, do you think, or not?
think
Surely going away from here, you should be in a position to be able to at least...
So inside a company, I think that C-suites are increasingly recognizing they can't simply delegate technology to the technologist. There are implications for the business. There are implications for HR. And so they need to achieve an internal integration that's horizontal in nature. I think between the private sector and the public sector, the new norm may well be that we have to collaborate. We have to figure out how to do that at the speed of this problem.
But Angela's saying there's a real struggle there within companies at the moment.
But this is going to be defined more going forward about the nature of our relationships than it is upon some static proposition that then plays out over time the same way every day. There is no grand sweeping solution either in technology or policy. It's going to have to change.
Thank you, John. Just reflecting on this, the capacity problem and the need to change at a speed which is more uncomfortable than most are prepared to even entertain. Rex.
Nick, will you allow another question to an audience to Angela?
Yeah, sure.
So, Angela, could you comment how this...
She meant to have a microphone.
Where'd she go? She's still here, isn't she? How this is supposed to work across international borders, because you can see how this might work in the US, public, private, et cetera. But your CEO, Satya Nadella, and Bill Gates just hosted a US-China de facto cyber summit. So how does it work across a bilateral relationship with that, when it's diplomatic at one level, but it's also Satya Nadella standing next to Zuckerberg in his hoodie and the Chinese president?
So, you know, as a private sector entity, us working as a global company, we work to treat all governments with parity. And I think the important thing, and I want to make sure I understood your question properly, is that we work on improving defenses. We also work to promote a conversation among governments about how to limit conflict, but we are going to be partnering with governments around the world, because ultimately that collaboration is essential to us collectively working to address the problem space. What we have to do is be very clear about what those objectives are, again, that we only work in the construct of improving defenses, and also very principled about that approach, being transparent about that collaboration, and a few other principles as well. But that's generally how you have to work to approach that public-private partnership in a complex geopolitical environment.
All right, does anyone else want to come in? I don't want this to be Microsoft-centric, or they would like it to be Microsoft-centric, but I'm more than happy to take a couple more comments on this. The microphone at the back, can you move it across? And we have our speakers have arrived as well, but just pick up the microphone and here as well. I'm just going to get this point first, if I can, please.
Yeah, I'm General Mike Flynn, and you know, it's just interesting that what we're talking about. We're operating in a century that we're so virtually connected, and it's so filled with complexity, and we're trying to put standards and rules and norms on things here that I don't know if we truly understand it. We're trying to put a rule on a chameleon that changes every single day. And one of the gentlemen earlier this morning, I think it was Ron, that mentioned about artificial intelligence, and the way artificial intelligence is already beginning to change the way not only the internet, but how we operate as societies. Today, there will be 80 million automated attacks. 80 million automated attacks today in the internet, against the internet, just cyber attacks. That is the average today. So when you begin to look back 10 years, you look ahead 5 years. So this complexity that we're facing is extraordinary. We're trying to put rules on something that I'm not sure we totally understand. We have to have some rules. I agree. Governments are, in the debates that we had in Jim's group here earlier, just a little while ago, you know, governments are trying to do things, but governments move so slowly. That's why non-state actors that move very rapidly, whether they're good non-state actors or bad non-state actors, they move at a speed that is so rapid, and governments can't keep up with that.
Mike, I was looking for you earlier, but I didn't realize you'd hidden at the back.
Yeah.
But this business of speed, of course, governments are made up of human beings. What about the human capacity, given your 33 years in government, and it's the same question as to Angela, about the board, the C-suite, but for you in government representing many people here, the ability of the systems of governance to handle this, because it's about human behavior.
Well, the The theoretical answer is yes, governments have to be able to protect their citizenry. They have to be able to protect their sovereignty. That's what they're designed to do. But in reality and practicality, it's damn near impossible. And so we are going to have to work in a world, and I'm not really sure that I have any answers, to be honest with you, but what I do know in chaotic, complex environments, which is essentially the internet. It's a very chaotic, very complex environment. We have to have some very wide-ranging latitudes or fields of fire, if you will, that give us a lot of latitude. If we try to impose really strict things, the citizenry, the people, are going to find ways around it. They are going to challenge their governments. That's not a bad thing. But speed is the new big. Governments are big. Governments will become irrelevant more and more over time, the way things are moving on the internet. And I'm not just talking about, you know, in the next couple of years, but over the next probably 20 to 30 years.
All right, keep provoking for tomorrow morning if you can, Mike. Please, thank you on that. Can I just get one more comment, and then we're going to move to the ministers?
Yeah, so Jeff Pearl with Takeda Pharmaceuticals, Chief Information Security Officer. You know, in closing on this, I think we all need each other. You know, in the world we're in, you know, someone used the word collaboration. There's only so much resources and so much money we have on the private side and the public side. And we're all here because we all have to work together. We have to figure out how to share information, how to share resources, to ultimately all try to fight the same battle, which is rising threats and rising risks. And our budgets and our resources are not going up at nearly the same level as the threats are. So I think it's so important for us to all come together and figure out how do we work together, how do we prioritize together and do the right thing.
All right, thanks. 2 quick points. Are we being radical enough, in your view, Rex and Dean?
Are we being radical enough? I'll say no. We can certainly push harder. I don't know where the radicals are out there. I see a lot of suits, so it's a little hard to tell.
How many radicals are out there? Raise your hand. Okay, there aren't enough. Okay, you're going to have to think about that over dinner. We'll get another show tomorrow. Not enough radicals here. Dean Takuda.
Yeah, I think so. Tomorrow, maybe you folks change the suits to T-shirts or something. We can be more radical. Yeah.
Radical and relaxed.
Yeah.
Break out the Birkenstocks.
And then establishing the trust among us. Yeah.
All right, Rex and Dean Takuda, thank you very much indeed. This is just a staging post to work out where we've got to by this time on the Saturday evening. So there's still much more work to be done later and during tomorrow. But can I thank you both indeed? And I'll invite the minister up. So thank you very much indeed. Let me now introduce Minister Amari, Minister in charge of Economic Revitalization, Minister in charge of Total Reform of Social Security and Tax, Minister of State for Economic and Fiscal Policy from the government of Japan. And he will speak, and then we will hear from Taro Kono. And then if you can store up your thoughts when we'll open the floor after both ministers have spoken. Minister.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As was introduced, my name is Akira Amari. I am in charge of many things, as was already introduced. So I will not go into details of my portfolio. So today, I would like to talk about the Japanese personal number system, the so-called My Number system. And thank you for this opportunity. In Japan, last month, the My Number law came into force to ensure the efficient administration of tax and social security information by assigning unique ID numbers to every citizen. And today, I should like to explain about our My Number system, and at the same time, talk about how this my number system would be utilized and expand the usage, and also to further talk about the growth strategy based on IT utilization. The my number system is a form of social infrastructure to realize a fair and equitable society, and it is the infrastructure for information society necessary for enhanced efficiency in the society and public convenience. And at this point in time, my number system will be applied to the tax and social security area. But going forward in the future, based on the actual implementation of the system, we would like to extend the scope of use to family register, passport, and administration security such as stocks, and extend the coverage as such. In most of the developed countries, individual number system has already been introduced. Therefore, globally, Japan is a late starter in this individual number system. However, because we are the late starter, maybe the last comer, from the very beginning, we can look to the challenges developed countries faced with in their process, and by solving those issues and challenges, we can introduce this system. So we could be at the forefront and leading edge of the digital era. Now, in Japan, as I said, the My Number law was enforced last month, and we are in the process of notifying each resident about their My Numbers. Starting January next year, every resident in Japan can use public personal authentication and carry out online individual identification. And after January next year, whoever is resident in Japan, including non-Japanese residents, can acquire for free the personal number card with embedded IC chip with electronic key. And this card could be used as ID card for public servants or the corporations, and in the future, it could be used as credit cards or cash cards. And we will be introducing the number system in medical care area. And after July 2017, the personal number card could be used as health insurance card at the medical facilities and institutions. And by 2020, we will be raising the utilization ratio of electronic patients chart or record to the level of 90% in major hospital. The receipt has already been made electronic. And by interconnecting the medical care related database the country holds, and the medical care big data could be used for drug creation, R&D for medical equipment, and for the creation of new healthcare industry. Thereby, we can transform the medical area as a growth sector. As you know, since Japan adopts the universal healthcare system, or health care insurance system. So with the realization of this initiative, medical and healthcare data covering the total population of 130 million could be used as big data. So there is the infinite, limitless possibility there, and there is a big hopes and expectation for such possibility. Currently, in Japan, under the leadership of Prime Minister Abe, so-called Abenomics are very actively being promoted, centering on economic growth. In order to promote economic growth and innovation further, the greater use of My Number system is of great importance. Also, in our growth strategy, it is important to enhance the productivity of Japanese industries in a dramatic way, with a view to promoting the private sector investment, leading to the increase in productivity. We have launched a new public-private dialogue consisted of prime ministers and business representatives. It was started last month. It is organized by Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Finance Minister, and the Chief Cabinet Secretary, METI Minister, and myself are participating from the cabinet. And from the business circle, the economic organizations, leaders like Keidanren and other organizations. So the fourth meeting was held the day before yesterday, Thursday, under the topic of the fourth industrial revolution, investment and issues covering IoT, big data, and AI. And this private public dialogue will be organized more than once a month going forward, and it will be a discussion on growth area and investment area, including automated vehicle, drone, and preventive medicine. And this dialogue is the opportunity to share the vision and awareness. And based on the prompt assessment and decision, the government will take actions promptly. And the Prime Minister will mention that such and such necessary deregulation will be done by such and such date at the end of the dialogue. So we will act speedily.
So to introduce My Number system, we are implementing various protection measures of individual information in terms of institution and system. But I am concerned that people have vague sense of anxiety about my number. In the future, we need to get people's understanding and acceptance by further enhancing privacy protection and information security. In this regard, I visited Estonia last month, where I got impressed that after they set up a legal framework for rigorously punishing the unauthorized access to personal information, the unified management is applied by the government on access authorization and access log, and where every citizen can confirm his or her own access log. This setup secures self-monitoring of personal information by a citizen. And also, in Estonia, it is a common practice to electronically process the tax return filing, opening a bank account, financial transaction, or hospital care, drug prescription, and so forth by personal identification with IC card. For example, with a patient's consent, the medical records can be shared by the different numerous medical institutions and doctors. I felt that each citizen feels merit of this system, which enabled it to be accepted and established. In Japan as well, with the introduction of My Number system, we will prepare a platform to build electronic government like Estonia. In addition, to let people, all the citizens, to feel its benefit, My Number should be conveniently used in many areas. And also, it is essential to brush up the system, taking into account the latest ICT trend and the privacy protection. Through this kind of initiative, Japan aims at becoming the world-leading IT-based nation. Thus, I have explained the outline of the My Number system as well as its future use. This time today in Okinawa, we have the world-leading experts on information security. Through this conference, we would like to learn more about the advanced information security activities in the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Minister, thank you very much indeed. We'll have some points from the audience shortly. Let me now invite Tara Kono to join us on the platform, Chairperson of the National Public Safety Commission for the Government of Japan. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Taro Kono. I'm a chairperson of a National Public Safety Commission that supervises the National Police Force. I never really read the text of my speech, but this evening I was given a script and I was told to behave myself. So please allow me to read from the script. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I covered this part. I would like to express my sincere congratulations on the occasion of Cyber3 Conference Okinawa 2015. It is a great pleasure to have distinguished cybersecurity experts from around the world here in Okinawa. I'm not just reading it, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. In recent years, the internet has become an established form of social infrastructure, essential to people's lives and socio-economic activities. Cyberspace and the physical space have become increasingly integrated, and today public security cannot be maintained without securing the safety of cyberspace. Japan will host major events such as the G7 Ise-Shima Summit meeting next year, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games in 5 years. To make sure the success of these events, we must take every effort to maintain public security, including cyberspace. I would now like to comment on the recent situation of the threats in cyberspace in Japan. In the last few years, there has been a great number of confirmed DOS attacks, causing targeted websites to cease services due to a large amount of access, and cyber espionage cases in which confidential information of government and private sectors were suspected to have been exfiltrated. From the night of November 4th to the morning hours of November 5th, the website of organizing committee of the Tokyo Olympic Paralympic Games received large amount of access, making it difficult to browse the website. This is currently under investigation. Regarding cyber espionage cases, in 2011, the factories of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, which produce submarines, missiles, and nuclear power plant components, suffered spear phishing email attacks, which damaged their systems. In this May, multiple computers of Japan Pension Service were also compromised, causing a massive leak of personal information stored in the agency. Among cases in recent years, it was confirmed that attackers used computers subscribed by Chinese individual for remote access, and strings written in Chinese characters were found in source code of malware used for the attack. The police are investigating these cases and trying hard to prevent them occurring again or becoming widespread. During a 6-month period from January to June this year, the police confirmed approximately 1,500 cases of spear phishing email attacks, which is approximately 7-fold compared with the same period of the previous year. This is an example which shows attacks are becoming more active and sophisticated. In light of the situation, the police has formulated a new cybersecurity strategy to advance effective countermeasures by exerting the collective strengths of the organization. For example, in order to enhance human resources, prefectural police recruited a total of 930 additional dedicated investigators in 3 years. It also recruited approximately 80 civilians as special investigators who have work-ready knowledge and skills. The National Police Agency is pushing forward to utilize knowledge from private sector. This year, it appointed 2 civilians as senior officials, ranking superintendent. You might think this is too slow, too small. I happen to be a minister in charge of civil service reform, and believe me, our budget could hardly afford these numbers, but we are doing it. In addition, the Research and Training Center for Cybersecurity, which has been added to National Police Academy, is now producing so-called hybrid investigators. This is to provide experienced crime investigators with hands-on education and training relating to cyber knowledge and technique. Approximately 300 investigators have already finished the program. We must prevent damage from spreading and restraining new crimes. Although many of the large corporations have resources to prevent the cyber attacks, SMEs often lack those human resources. The police are trying to locate third-party command and control servers that have been secretly established on the web servers of SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as to take down the compromised computers controlled by the C2 servers. Each of the 47 prefectural police headquarters have now established cooperative bodies with small and medium-sized enterprises within their jurisdiction in order to apply detailed preventive measures for such business. Through these frameworks, the police can make sure the cutting-edge technology of the small and medium-sized business in our country are not exfiltrated, and the computer servers of the SMEs are not used as hope servers in cyber attacks. Furthermore, regarding the dark web, thought to be used as a crime infrastructure in internet, the police have made efforts to take down malicious websites by enhancing information gathering, as well as detecting illegal activities through cyber patrolling and other measures. On the other hand, the ever-progressing information and communication technology, the forms of cybercrime and cyber attacks have become increasingly sophisticated and ingenious, making it impossible for the police to act alone in tackling this issue. In order to take various measures against threats in cyberspace, it is necessary to work in coordination with the private sector and academia. Given this situation, the Japan Cybercrime Control Center, known as JC3, was established in Japan last November. It is part of an initiative to oversight the whole of cyberspace by sharing information, knowledge, and experiences, and contribute to the prevention of subsequent incidents by identifying, mitigating, and neutralizing the root of threats in cyberspace. JC3 has a good cooperative relationship with NCFTA, National Cyber Forensics and Training Alliance of the United States. You probably know better than me about this organization, so I'll skip the next part. In addition, the police have built a network with approximately 7,000 business operators nationwide and are making efforts to share information. The police also provide assistance for critical infrastructure providers, such as electricity, water, gas, railroad, finance, nuclear power plant, etc., to enhance their capacity by conducting joint counter-cyber terrorism exercise. Cybercrimes and cyber attacks have the nature of easily crossing the national borders. Damage extend over the many countries. Perpetrators are located abroad, and the modus operandi is sophisticated and complex. On the other hand, traces of crime disappear by the minute. This April, ICPO established Interpol Global Complex for Innovation in Singapore to strengthen the response to cybercrime. Japan will cooperate with such international bodies and actively promote countermeasures against the international cybercrime. In addition, it is also necessary to close loopholes in the cyber field by assisting capacity building in countries that don't have enough capability in countering threats in cyberspace. As a member of the Asian community, Japan has promoted international cooperation by hosting programs which aim to enhance sharing of knowledge and experience on analysis technology and cyber investigation, and investigative capability, especially among law enforcement agencies in the Asia-Pacific region. While continuing existing initiatives, Japan will provide more effective assistance by meeting specific needs of each country in the future. As the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games approach, the threat in the cyberspace must increasingly intensify. Being in a position to supervise the police, I would like to make the event a great success. In order to do so, we will need to further promote public-private partnership and international cooperation. I would like to take this opportunity to ask for your assistance and cooperation. I would also like to point out that we intend to contribute as much as possible in joint effort with your country to tackle the threat in cyberspace. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Kono-san, thank you very much indeed. Right, we have 10 minutes. Who'd like to come in, please? One at the front and there, please. Microphone here. Hori-san here. Anyone else at the back? Further, who am I not seeing? And I'll come to the middle. We have 10 minutes only, so please be as short and sharp as possible.
Yoshi Hori of Globus. I have a question to Minister Amari. And congratulations to a successful TPP. We all appreciate your efforts put into this agreement. We have all discussed about the needs. We have all discussed about the needs for new norm and new rule among international communities. We believe TPP is a great body to enhance the counterattack for cyber terrorists. Have you discussed about this issue within TPP, or do you have any intention to use TPP as a body to counterattack terrorists and also hackers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amari-san.
Could you put on your earphones? Very sorry. I don't have enough time to master English by the time of this session.
Well, thank you.
TPP はですね、大事なことは、
What's important about the
関税
Trans-Pacific
やその
Partnership
周辺
is
に関
that
する
it
こと
covers
だけで
tariff
なくてですね、
and related matters, but
今ま
not
で取り扱っ
only
てなかった
that,
ような分野、
new areas which have not
ル
been
ール
dealt
とか
with
知財とか
by
GI とか
the
ですね、
undertakings like
広範に
rules
取り
or
扱っているわけで
IPR
あり
or
ます。
GI,
でそこで
geographical
出来
indications,
上がったル
very
ールをですね、
wide-ranging coverage. And
世
so
界基準にして
the
いこうと、
rules set
おそら
up
く世界基準にな
will
っていく
be
んだと思います
made a global standard. We
TPP は2つの
intend to
点
do
で
so.
今までの EPA と
is
次元が違
different
う。
from the
一つは
conventional
ですね、
EPA in two respects.
その取り扱ってくる
One is
内容
that
が極めて幅広いとい
the
うこと。
wide-ranging
それからもう一つはですね、12カ
in this
国で終わら
undertakings.
ないと、もうす
And
でにウ
also,
ェイティン
another
グサー
point
クル
is
に
that
数カ国
it's
が待
not
っている
only
わけであります。
12 member
でその数カ国
countries.
が入ってく
There
る
are
と、
already
なだれ
countries
現象でですね、
lining up in the waiting
広がってい
circle.
く。
And
現状
as
で
they
も世
come
界
in,
の
there will
GDP の
be
4割
a
が参加してい
domino
るわけです。
spread.
たちまち
And
5
in
割になる
terms of
と、これは
GDP, already
WTO が
40%
今
of the world is
搾取していてです
covered,
ね、
and
動
it
か
will
ない
become
世界ルールがで
50%.
きない。世界ルー
WTO
ルを
is
作る
stuck and
その
cannot formulate a global
元に
set
なっ
of
ている
rules.
と
So
思います。
TPP will be the basis for establishing the global rules. You talk about cyber security.
かなりこの濃密に議論がなされたわけじゃないです
It's
けど
not
も、
that
こ
we
れから
had a
その種
very
をですね、
intensive discussion,
新しい事
but
態にど
going
う対処す
forward,
るかの
we
基
will
準
be
もおそら
discussing
く
about
TPP が
the
中心に
standards
作ら
to
れてい
cope
くと
with
いう
the
ふうに
new
思い
situation.
ます。
TPP will be
価値観を
active
共有
in
する
such
国々
area
が
as
集
well
まっていますから、
because this
それ
is
が世界のスタンダードに
organization
なってい
of
く
the
と思いま
countries
すが、
with shared
TPP
values
は
and come up
妥
with the global
結をされた
standards.
ところが
TPP
終わりでなくてですね、
came
妥結をされ
to
たところがスタ
a
ートに
conclusion,
な
but
って
it's
い
not
くと
the
思
end.
い
It
ま
is
す。
the starting point of the continuous efforts.
Right. Another question, and then here, please.
Butterworth Deloitte Consulting. In terms of strengthening Japan's cybersecurity and ability to go after cyber criminals, the FBI, the Australian Federal Police, and other law enforcement have had great success using undercover operations to penetrate child pornography rings, financial hacking gangs. And my understanding is that Japan, it's very difficult to conduct undercover operations in the cyber realm. Do you see this as a problem, and is Japan thinking of taking any steps in this area?
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for your comment
今国
question.
会で
Because at the
審議
national
をしてい
diet
る
parliament
刑
we
事
are
訴訟
discussing
法
about
案
this
が
criminal
改正案が
lawsuit, new
成立すれば、
amendment bill.
ようやく
If this bill
司
will be
法
adopted,
取引
then
ができるよ
finally
うになる。
we could
ある
have
いは
the
通信
bargaining
傍受の範
as
囲
well
が
as this. Maybe we can
広がる
really
ことに
monitor
なり
this
ます
some of the communication
まず
and
それ
so
を
on.
やって
So
み
we
る
can
と
have
い
a
うのが
broader way to
今
get
の我々の
information.
スタン
So
スで
that's one
なかな
step
か
forward.
今おっしゃったとこ
But
ろま
as
で
you said, it's
いける
difficult
か
to
どうか
start
とい
to
うの
that
は少し
extent
時間
of
がかかる
undercover.
のかもし
It
れま
might
せん
take
し
a long
そ
time
っちへ行くの
some
が
time.
日本の
And
国
whether
の
going
中
to
とし
that
て
direction is
そういう方
really
向に行こう
something
ということに
accepted
なるか
by
は
the
分
Japanese
かりま
public
せ
or
んが
not, I don't know.
FBI と比
But
べて比べ
compared
ら
to
れてしまうと
FBI,
少し
and when you
歩み
compare
が
with
遅
FBI
いと思いま
investigation,
す
our
が
progress is
できる範囲
slower.
で一生懸命
But
頑
as
張っ
much
ていき
as
たい
we
と
are
思いま
allowed
す
and we can, we'd like to do our best.
Who else would like to come in, please? Can I get the microphone to somebody over there first?
So it was great to hear that you learn from the experience of other countries when implementing the My Number system with a card. And I would like to know what privacy protection measures are in place for the My Number. I'm slightly worried about the name My Number, which implies the same identity for every verifier. And I would like to be reassured that the system allows the citizen to identify to the various verifiers in a way that cannot be relinked by all of them behind the scenes.
日本の個人情報保護法制がですね、先進国のスタンダードにまだ追いついてないという指摘も一部あります。そして現在その特定個人情報保護委員会というものがありますけど、これを個人情報保護全体のですね、この委員会に広げていく作業が進んでおります。これはもう年が明ければですね、いわゆるその EU が要求しているようなことに対応できるような
we will come to the level so that our personal information protection will be at the level of EU, what EU requires of us.
Anyone else like to come in at this point? I don't see any. Yes, please. We've got 4 minutes to run, so please put up your hand.
I'll be short. Let me ask you in English. Thank you. Thank you very much for your insightful presentation. I'm from Japan side for the security and crisis management, and I'm giving a lecture on the strategy of cyber warfare as well. So my question is for Mr. Kono. I'd like you to highlight, the advantage or forte of Japan's cybersecurity, cybersecurity efforts to foreigners here. Yes, could you please do that? I think this is a great opportunity for Japan as well. Thank you.
Tell us what was not written in your speech.
Yes, please.
ありがとうございま
Thank you
す。
very much for the question.
何が強み
So
か
what's
と
the
いう前に
advantage
何
and
が弱み
strength?
かと
What's
いう
the
のがどう
weakness
も
might be
今
something
先
that
行
we
している
try
よう
to
な気
talk
が
about.
してい
We
ます
tend to overfocus on
今の
weakness
警
rather than
察
talking
の
about
リソ
advantage
ー
and
ス、
strength.
人的ある
The
いは
police
お金、
resources, human and
足りません
budgetary thing, we are
結
short
局
of budget and
警
human
察だ
resources.
けで
The
こ
national
のサイ
police
バー
and
スペー
police
スの
alone
セキュリティを
might
守
not
ると
be
いうことは
enough
お
to
そらく
protect
で
the
きないん
cyberspace
で
and security.
民間
We
の
cannot do
リ
it
ソース
alone.
を借
We
りなければ
need
いけ
to
ないし、
mobilize
民
the
間の
private
技術
sector
を
resources
借
and
り
their
なければやは
technology
り
is
いけない
necessary
んだと
in
思いま
order
す。
to do the
外
whole
の技
thing.
術はどんどん進
Outside
歩してますか
technology
ら、
seems to be
警察
advancing
の技
very
術だけ
rapidly.
では
The
すぐに
police
陳腐
technology
化をしてし
alone
まう。
might be
そう
obsolete
する
very
とこの
quickly.
官民連
Therefore,
携と
the
いうのが日
public
本の
private
やはり
sector
一番の
cooperation
強み
is
な
a
のかな
strength
という
maybe.
気
We
が
can
していま
cooperate
す。
between the private sector and public
何かあ
sector.
れば、例えば
That's our
第二
strength.
次世界大
Like
戦の後、
right
戦後
after
の
the World
復
War
興、
II, during the
これは
post-war
一大官
reconstructing
民連携
period,
だったと
the
私は思っ
public
ていますけ
sector
ど
and
も、
private sector
何か目
cooperate
標があっ
very
て
well
政
to
府と民
succeed
間
in
が
that
協
era.
力し合って
So
目
that
標
the
を達
private
成する
sector
っていう
and
の
the
は
public
日
sector
本は
can
非常に
cooperate
得
to
意
do
な分野だ
something.
と思いま
That's
す
a
んで、こ
strong
の
area
サイ
for
バー
Japan.
セキュリテ
So
ィという
even
分
in
野
the
は官だけ
cybersecurity
でもでき
area,
ないし、
the public
民だけ
sector
でも
alone
できな
cannot
いと
solve
いうとこ
and
ろから
private
見る
sector
と、
alone
この
cannot
官
solve.
民連携の
So
巧み
this
さという
collaboration
のが
and its skill
日
in
本
that
の
partnership
強み
will
なのではない
enable
か
Japan
と
to
いう
exercise
と
its
ころ
strengths
でお許しをいただき
to
た
a
いと
full
思い
extent.
ます。
Maybe that's my answer to that question.
Please, microphone there.
Thank you very much. I'm from the Center for Democracy and Technology in the U.S. In the U.S., we have a problem we refer to as the technology pipeline problem, which is often our young students that are really good at technical subjects, the technologists that are growing up, have more incentive to go work in industry and less incentive to work in government. And that often means there's sort of a deficiency in the government realm for young technical folks. Do you have that in Japan? And if so, what are you doing about it? If not, how do we learn from you to not have that problem?
Minister.
アメリカで
In the United States,
優秀な
the excellent
技術者は
engineers
政府から
or
離れて
engineering students stay
Google
away
と
from the
Apple が全部取っ
government,
ちゃうっていう話
and
が
Google and Apple take them
ありま
all,
すけれども、
as we
そ
understand
れは
it.
別に給料がいいから言ってる
And
んじゃ
it's not
ないんです
because
ね。
the pay is good.
技術者の探求心を満たす
That would be the
環境が
place
整
to
っている
work
か
an
ら
environment
そこに
to
行くんです。
fulfill the engineers'
月給の高いから行くんじゃなくて、
curiosity and the
自
pursuit
分の
of
知的好奇心を満たせるからそこに行
what
くんです
they want
ね。
to know. It's
で、日
not the
本は
high
今何をや
level
ろう
of
かとしています
salary,
とですね、
but their
その
intellectual
基礎研
curiosity is
究
fulfilled.
が
What we are
実
trying
用
to
化
do
に
in Japan
最短
is
距離
that
で結びつく
the
ような
results of
仕組みを作
basic
っています。
research could
そし
be
て基礎研
connected
究に
to
携わる
the actual
技術者がですね、研
application
究者が
at the
実
shortest
用化のところ
possible
ま
way.
で
So
その
the
自由に
researchers working
自
in
分
the
の所
basic
属を移動でき
research
る
can
ような仕組みを
move
作
to
ってい
the
るわけ
application
であり
field
ます。
and
そ
free
うすることによ
movement
って
as
知的
such.
好奇
We
心を
are
満たすと
trying
同
to
時に
set
で
up
すね、
such mechanism.
彼らの
In
活動
that
が
way, the researcher can
実
fulfill
社会の
their
世界
intellectual
への
curiosity,
貢献につ
but
なが
at the
っていく
same
よう
time,
に
they can
今
have the sense of
設計をしているところ
satisfaction
であります。
that their
そういう
research
中で
results
大
would
学も
contribute to the actual society.
第二次
And the
国立
universities,
大学改革ということを
we
や
are
って
conducting the
お
second
ります。
round of national
そ
university
のアメリカの大学の
reform.
ような魅力的な大学を日
Attractive
本に作っていこう。
universities like US
そして
universities, and we like
知
to
的好
create
奇心を満た
such
せるような環境
universities
整備をしていこう
and try
とい
to
うこ
come
とを
up
今
with the
懸命に取り組ん
environment
でいる
which
とこ
can
ろであります。
fulfill intellectual
給料はそんなに
curiosity.
払えないと
We
思
are
いま
trying
す
to do that. We cannot afford to pay high level salaries anyway.
Let me just ask Chairperson Kono, Mr. Kono, can I just ask you about one of the questions as you were coming into the room was about how radical the mindset has to be and how quickly it can change. Do you believe in Japan that there is an awareness that you can at least catch up with the speed and at least be on the same level as the pressure that you're now under in the way that you described? Sophisticated and ingenious traces of crime disappear in a few minutes.
さっきの官民連携が日本
Yes,
の
I
強
said
みだ
that
というこ
the
とに
private-public
対
partnership is
角に
really
ある
the
のが
strength,
この
but in the reverse side of the
どれだけ
coin
ラディカ
is
ルに
that
日本が
to
変
what
われる
extent
かというところ
radically
なん
Japan
だ
can
と思い
change
ます
itself
や
and
っぱ
how
りまだ日
quickly we
本
can
の社
respond
会
and
という
change.
のはこう
The
ピラミ
Japanese
ッド側の
society
ピラ
tends
ミッド
to be
型のピ
based
ラミ
upon
ッドを
pyramid
一つ一つ
type
登っていく
organization.
と
You
いう
have
の
to
が
go step by
政府にも
step,
企業にもいろ
gradual
んなところ
improvement,
にあって
and that's
で
persistent
おそら
in
く
the
それでは
government
対応
and
で
private
きない世
sector,
の
but
中
that's
に
too
なり
slow.
つつあ
The
る
things are
みん
changing
な気
too
づいてるんだけ
rapidly.
どなかなかそ
People
のピラミッド
recognize
が
this,
壊せ
but
な
the
いというの
pyramid
が
is so
今の日本
difficult
の
to
現
be
状ではないの
dismantled,
か
and
な
that's
という
the
ふうに思
status
ってま
quo
す
here in
それに飽
Japan.
き足らない人は
So some
シン
people
ガ
who
ポ
are
ール
not
に行ったりアメリカ
satisfied,
に
they
行った
might
り
move
し
to
てしまう
Singapore or the
だから日本
USA.
はその
So
思
in
い切っ
Japan,
て
we have to
今
be
まで
more
の成功
drastic.
体験を
We
離れ
have
て
the
新し
past
い時
the
代で
success
何ができる
experiences,
かとい
but
う
what
こと
can
を
we do in
や
the
らなけ
new
ればいけないん
era,
だと
new
思います
moment?
が
I think we
そ
have
れは
to
政府の中で
change
も
in that
い
sense.
ろんなことを
Within
やろ
the
うとする
government,
と
we are
こう
trying
プレッシャー
to
がかかって
change
くるという
drastically,
場面
but
も
we get pressured and we
あ
can't
ります
really
ので
change
そこはやっぱ
quickly.
り日本
It's
の弱み
difficult.
かなというのを
That
実
might
感し
be
て
a
ま
bit
す。
of a weakness for Japan, I feel.
All right. One last question, please.
Well, I cannot speak in English quickly, so let me speak in Japanese and ask you in Japanese to save time, okay? 甘利大臣、河野大臣、お二人にどうしても聞きたいことがあります。安倍総理が新たな3本の矢、アベノミクス日本再生の3本の矢ということで、その中に GDP を600兆円にするという目標を掲げました。これ何年後にやるのか分かりませんけども、GDP を600兆円にするというのは、大体名目 GDP を 3% ぐらい稼いでいかなければいけないということで大変だと思うんですけども、これを達成するためにはどう考えてもベンチャーを起こしていかなければいけない。まさに技術的な革新とベンチャーが必要だと思いますが、甘利大臣はまさしく安倍政権の中でベンチャー支援の中心核となってやっておられました。河野大臣は実は警察行政だけではなくて実は規制改革担当大臣なんです。私が気になるのはこの総理が掲げた新しいアベノミクスの中で規制改革の部分がちょっと弱いんじゃないかと思ってます。実はこの会議はダボス会議にもしてもらってるんですけども、1月のダボス会議で総理が岩盤規制をぶち抜いていくと言いました。ぜひこの規制改革を進めていかなければいけないと思うので、その点についての2人の決意を伺いたいのと、それから新しい産業という点でいうと、サイバースペース、このサイバーセキュリティの新しい産業を日本で起こしていくということについてはどうお考えになるか、早口で日本語で聞かせていただきました。
New cyber security industry. Thank you.
山本一太前大臣を
Yamamoto is
答えられ
the
るのが一番
former
正解だと思いますが、
minister in charge of these
簡
matters,
単に
and
申
he
し上げま
should
すと、
be answering
現
his
在
own
の500
questions.
兆の名目
But
GDP を
currently, the nominal
オ
GDP
リン
is
ピックを過ぎた
500
頃
trillion
です
yen
ね
now. And
600
sometime
兆にしてい
after the
く。それは
Olympics,
おっしゃる通
we
り、
intend to
毎年
increase
3% の
to
成長が必要
600
です。
trillion, which
で、そ
would
のためにや
require
ること、
3% growth
すぐにや
per
ること、
annum
それから
every
これ
year.
からプラン
And
を
there
作っ
are
ていく
things
こ
we
とが
can
2
do
つあります。
immediately, and there
す
are
ぐにやる
something
こと
we'll
は
be
ですね、
formulating plans
好
from
循
now.
環を回していく、
Immediate
経済の好
measures
循環を回していく。
is to start
事業
a
環境を良
virtual
くして
circle
企
in the
業は
economy.
史上
Business
最大の
environment
収
will be
益を得
improved,
ています。
and the
それが史上
corporations are
最大の
enjoying
内部留
record
保
high
につな
profit,
がりまし
and
た。
that leads
しかし
to
それ
the
が還元さ
record
れていませ
high
ん。
internal
賃
retention,
金、
but it
投
is
資、
not
配当等にですね、還元するです
circulated
ね、
in
しっかりし
terms
た
of
循環には結果
wage
が詰
and
まってますから、それを
investment
結果を通して
and
ですね、
the dividend.
しっかり
So there is
3% ぐらい
the
の賃上げをや
channel
ってもらうと、
is
最
clogged,
低賃金
and
を
so
上げる
it
と、
should
そして、
be promoted. So wage should be increased
生産性を
3%
上げ
per
る投資
annum
も
or
するし、
so,
研究開発投資も
and
すると、配当もしっかりやる
investment
と。
in
これを
higher
回していくと、
productivity, R&D,
経済の
and
全体の力が
also
大き
a
くなるから
higher
収益がも
dividend.
っと大きく
And
なる。
when this
こ
starts
れをしっか
moving,
り
then the
自動
economy
循環
as a
する
whole
ま
will
で
have
政府は
a
投資をするということ
stronger
が一つです。
investment and
それから
spending.
もう
And
一
the
点はですね、
government should
日
be
本が
making
世界で
investment
一番
to
イノベ
start
ー
this rolling. And another point is that we should establish a system so that Japan can be the most innovative country in the world. So the new research and results outcome should be come out of Japan all the time, which means that we have to have a system to connect basic research to the actual application at the shortest period and shortest distance. And to that end, we should be changing the universities and colleges in medical care. And one of the pillars of Japan's growth strategy is to cope with the social issues and taking advantage of that and lead to the growth. So the global issues, which will be inevitable, such as the aging of the population with a fewer number of children, And we can reverse this viewpoint to come up with a good, healthy society. So pharmaceutical equipment, and medical care, and the drug creation. We should be the best country with all these, and the country with the quickest launching of such new aspects. And we have established a system in April this year, and we started this. And so over the short period, we have to remove the blocks of a good virtuous circle, and deregulation is important, where Mr. Kono's role is very important. I mentioned the public-private dialogue between the government and the private industry. The Prime Minister will come up with the conclusion there at the meeting about the drones, where is the deadline when the deregulation is done, and what about the autonomous driving, deregulation by such and such, and the 2020 Olympics will be a showcase to show what Japan can do to the world. And in that, cybersecurity is a very important topic, so Japan will be at the leading edge in promoting this.
Mr. Kono.
Should I just say ditto to save time? 規制緩和も大事ですし、これは私の仕事ですからしっかりやりたいと思いますが、今の日本に必要なのは法律の規制緩和というよりもマインドの規制緩和なんだと思います。アメリカの時価総額の大きな企業のリストを見ると、もう10年ごとに会社が入れ替わっているにもかかわらず、日本は依然として同じ名前がずっと出てきて、おそらく新しいのはソフトバンクと中ぐらいしかないという現状だと思いますが、
companies
大きなところに入ってピラミッドを上がっていくのがいいんだという考え方から自分でピラミッドを作ってトップになるんだというふうに多くの人の考え方が変わっていくのが大事で、規制緩和の法律の規制緩和というのはそう考えている人たちがビジネスをやりやすくするための手段でしかないと思います。ですからいくら手段を作ってもやろうという人が出てきてくれなければ続かないというのが一つと、もう一つやっぱりここでその600兆円にするために議論しなければいけないのは外国からの労働力をどうするんだということをそろそろテーブルの上に乗せてですね、日本はこの国はfor Japan.
Immigration. What do you think about the immigration policy in the future? We have to seriously discuss specifics about immigration and deregulation, because that issue will take a long time. People get to have a more emotional discussion on immigration issue. So it's not too late. It's not late. Maybe it's already too late. We have to start discussing frankly about immigration issue. We have to make our mindset so that we can start discussing about labor issue as well.
We do have to pause. Can I just remind you, thank you very much indeed, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Kono. This has just been a stock take halfway through the conference. And there are plenty of challenges still out there for dinner tonight and then through tomorrow until lunchtime about how radical you really want to be, how radical you want the message to be. That's what Saito-san was urging us to do, and there's still a bit of work to do on trust and transparency, on the big implications, on the big ideas, on decision makers and how the C-suites and governments understand many of these new challenges and the speed. The challenge of coordination. How many eyes will there be? The legal and political systems struggling to catch up. Will they still be in the Jurassic Park? It is about all these unthinkables, and I can only encourage you to keep pushing. Your work is not over yet. Let me leave it now to the MC for instructions for dinner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amari and Mr. Kono and Mr. Gowing. And this concludes today's program. On behalf of the conference organizer, I'd like to thank you all for your active participation in the discussions.